Ended up being a 21-14 victory for Georgia State. Georgia Southern falls to 2-6, 1-4 in conference play on the season. And I look ahead to the number 21 ranked Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, and who better to tell us about Coastal Carolina than Joe Cashion, the voice of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, who looks like he's at the beach himself.
Of course he is.
Of course. Beautiful weather here today, boys.
Joe, appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on to talk about this weekend's game.
Give us just kind of the vibe around what Coastal Carolina has been like really for the last 2 years. We caught up last year whenever Georgia Southern was there, but you were without Grayson Mccall that day. What has the last 2 years been like for this program?
It's been a wild ride. I mean, when last year happened, kind of happened when no one really expected it, quite frankly. I mean, you're coming off a couple of 5-7 seasons, and then all of a sudden you go 11-1, and you win a share of the conference championship, and you go to your first bowl game, and you get all sorts of accolades, and you're in the top 20, and everybody in the country's talking about you at mullets and this sort of thing. And it was just last year was crazy. And I guess the question this year was, were we a one-hit wonder last season? Well, so far, no. I mean, we're 7-1, and we're still pretty good, and people are still feeling pretty good about themselves. We still have one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best players in all of college football, and Grayson Mccall. And, we lost a tough one a couple of weeks ago. Everyone on that trip went in expecting to win. And for about one quarter, it looked an awful lot like that's what we were going to do. And then, things settled down. They're a pretty good team on their field and their place. Last second loss, but we're able to bounce back from that. Beating, I think, is a better than advertised Troy football team. I think they're a little bit better than maybe what their record shows. But 7-1, still carrying on the momentum from last season, and looking forward to trying to get our first win in Statesboro.
You know that anytime you do an interview talking about Coastal Carolina, you're going to be talking about Grayson Mccall. Like we talked about, he didn't play against Georgia Southern last year, was a little bit banged up. The only game he didn't play in a year ago. But what has he grown even from last year into this year? What does he mean to this team?
Well, he means everything, honestly, on offense. I mean, he's the straw that stirs the drink. You watch us play, and you just watch us watch him make the plays that he makes. I mean, the way that he can move around and get away from pressure, and take a bad play and turn it into a 74-yard touchdown like he did in Appalachian. A play that's breaking down. Average guys just can't do that. I mean, good quarterbacks don't do what he can do. His completion percentage has gone up. The efficiency rating, yards per attempt. I mean, he leads the FBS in a number of categories. Quarterback rating is off the charts. I mean, you take him out of this thing, and we're still pretty good, but we're not. It's just like from there to there. I know you can't see this what I'm doing in the hand, but I mean, it's like one level to a next level up. With him, and he just takes us to that level. So. He means everything to this football team, and he takes a beating now. He took a beating the other night against Troy. Took several hits out there. He's running the ball a little bit more the last several weeks because I think we kind of need that because we've been banged up at the running back position a little bit, so he needs to run the ball a little bit more. But just look at the numbers and look at what he does out there, and he's everything for this team.
I want to go back to something you mentioned a little bit earlier because Coastal, the first 3 years in the league, 2-6 in conference, 2-6 in conference, 2-6 in conference, and now a team that is one of the best in the country. And what you said typifies that mindset. It's an expectation to win. It's not going in for the effort. You guys have become the program that is expecting to win wherever you're going.
I think Jamie Chadwell is the reason for all of that too. I think him being hired by Coach Moglia, prior to the 2017 season, and then him being thrust into that interim role, when Coach was sick and had to take a sabbatical, and then when Jamie got elevated to the head coach permanently in 2019, he has brought a mentality and a way of doing things and a staff and an infrastructure and an attitude that has taken that program from what you just said, the 2-6 conference years, when we struggled and we would shuffle off to someplace in the Sun Belt, take our butt whipping and go on home. Those days are over. And I think that is all attributable to what Jamie has done and his mindset and what he's done in Conway. And, this being his 5th season now here with us.
I saw an article earlier today, I think came out a couple of weeks ago, talking about how there's a lot of guys on this team that are the leaders of this group that came in when this team was still an FCS program and not highly recruited by any stretch of the imagination, whether it be Trey Carter, Silas Kelly, different guys. What is that mentality around this team of everybody counted us out, whether it was when we were recruited, when we were back to 2-6, and now being able to do what this team has done?
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the Trey Carters, the Silas Kellys, the CJ Brewers, guys that played, that came in that 2016 class as we were making that transition. I mean, Silas Kelly and CJ Brewer played the very first time we were at Arkansas State in 2017, our first year of FBS. I mean, so they saw it. They saw the struggles. They saw what happened in that 3-9 season, and we've got a number of super seniors on our team, that came in and came in those years when we were making the transition. And they saw how tough it was. They saw what the level of competition was like, as opposed to what it used to be at the FCS level. Then you step up to 85 and you get into the Sun Belt Conference and you go play teams like a Georgia Southern, like a Troy, like a Louisiana, like an Arkansas State, teams like that, Appalachian, of course. You go play those kinds of teams and you get whipped. You figure out real quick that you got to get better. You got to work harder. You got to get better. You got to do things better. And those guys have been around and they know what it was like then. And having them lead us to where we are now has been invaluable.
It just seems like it's been such a boost for not only the football program, not only athletics, but it just seems the whole university is benefiting from this wave of positivity and all the national attention. You announced that you're building the indoor here soon. I think soccer's getting a new complex as well. So there's just so much that's going on up there that's not necessarily just what's going on the surf turf.
Absolutely right. There is a lot of momentum on the campus, as you mentioned, athletically. And we had that big donation to where all the facilities are going to be stepped up. The indoor facility, like you talked about, the soccer stadium, all that kind of stuff. It bleeds over to academics too. I mean, people know the logo. I mean, people know from what they saw last season. We filled a void last year, when some of these other big conferences, the Power 5 conferences, a couple of them didn't play. And so they had to find storylines, and the way that we played, we were able to step into that void, step into the breach and win and have fun doing it. And that got a lot of people's attention. And again, not just for football, it just kind of bleeds over into other things. And they know that logo again, and they know things are going on in Conway. And it's a lot of momentum right now.
Look, for as much as you guys were on national TV last year, if somebody didn't know what a Chanticleer was after last year, they're never going to know what a Chanticleer is.
Well, you'd still be surprised at the people who still can't figure out how to pronounce it. And we even put out videos on that thing. Hey, this is how you pronounce Chanticleer. It ain't the chants. It ain't the chandeliers. I've heard all of that nonsense. You still get it out there.
Take us into this offense. So many different weapons, and you return so many guys, 9 offensive starters back from a year ago. But Jayvon Hiley, Isaiah Likely, Shamari Jones, so many different guys that you've known year after year and just keep on getting better.
They really do, Colin. And again, we've talked about Grayson already, but Jayvon Hiley's having a fantastic year. In fact, he just set the school record for most, career 100-yard receiving games the other night with a big night against Troy. I mean, he's having a big season. Caught 65 balls last year. Think he'll play at the next level. Isaiah Likely, tied for, I think, the nation's lead right now, touchdowns for tight ends. I mean, and that guy had a monster. He had a career against Arkansas State a couple of weeks ago. A 99-yard touchdown pass for a tight end, even though he's more of a tight end / wide receiver kind of guy. He's got that kind of foot speed, but he is definitely a guy that I think will play on Sunday. Big time prospect for the next level is Isaiah Likely. And then Shamari Jones, Coach talked a little bit. It was either in his press conference, it might have been on our radio show last week about, how Shamari came in last season and he was kind of trying to find his way along, and whether this was the right place for him or not, he wasn't sure, but he stuck it out. And man, is he having a big time year. He missed a couple of games for us, but he's been big for us these last couple that we played. And of course, Reese White, he got a little banged up the other night. He was our leading rusher going into the Troy game. He's got speed, pretty good hands, and he does a lot of good things for us too. And a young kid that I really, really like and is going to come on and be something for us is Braden Bennett. Yeah. He was a track star in high school, and he caught that wheel the other night against Troy. Took it for 71-yard score. That kid's going to be a good one by the time it's all said and done. But I mean, there are a lot of experienced skill guys on offense. Grayson is the thing that makes it go, but there are a lot of other weapons out there that help it go too.
And that's what I was going to ask you about, because with C.J. Marable being such a valuable receiver out of the backfield, no running back in the league had more catches than him last year. Who was going to make up for it? I know Shamari only has one catch, but when you could have somebody that can work just like a slot but also play running back and catch a long touchdown against Troy, that void's been filled. He's been impressive.
That's a great point you make, Danny. And I really think in the Appalachian State game, we needed that. We needed somebody like that to kind of get some bodies out of the box, because that's kind of what App was doing. Marable hurt them last year in the pass game. We got them a couple of times in the passing game just because he could go out, catch the ball on the run. He could be vertical and horizontal too. But we've got guys that are slowly getting into that kind of role and are becoming those kinds of, C.J. Marable-like players.
You talk about the Troy game a week ago, got the victory over the Trojans, 35-28, but late in that ball game, you're up with 4th down, about 3 minutes to go. You're lined up to punt it away. Were you as surprised as everybody else that C.J. Brewer took that ball and ran for a first down?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
yeah.
Man. Appreciate you. Just making sure we were on the same page here.
Yeah, I don't need to – I was not expecting that. I felt pretty good, even if we were going to punt it away right there. I also felt like if Troy went down and scored, they were going to go for 2 and go for the win. That's kind of what I was thinking. And they were going to have, like you just mentioned, a couple of minutes on the clock. And then all of a sudden, boom, they snap it to CJ, and here he goes and picks up a block or two and rambles his way for a first down. And I thought, man, that's Jamie Chadwell right there. He said no risk it, no biscuit in his post game. That's on the call sheet. So, you got to play to win, roll the dice, see what happens.
JV even said, though, that CJ missed the hole when he had to break a tackle to get the first down.
Yep, he sure did. Yeah, that's and I'll tell you in all honesty too. Jamie has said that CJ would be a great NFL fullback if he chose to do that. I think he's got a potential to be a D lineman at the next level, but I think CJ has phenomenal hands. He may have the best hands of anybody on the team, quite frankly. He's got phenomenal hands, and he's strong as an ox. He caught a touchdown pass against Kansas last season. Yeah. So he is a good athlete all the way around. And when they snapped it to him and he took off, I thought, oh boy, here we go.
We talked about 9 returning offensive starters. You've got 10 returning defensive starters. What's the biggest part of what that defense has looked like in the Black Swarm of 2021?
It's a little bit of a different kind of look this year without Teron Jackson. We've tried to plug a few guys in over there on that side. It's been a little bit of a different look, but again, it's kind of, want to get to the ball fast. I think our second level is probably the best part of that defense when you're talking about Enoch Maconzo and Teddy Gallagher and Silas Kelly, our leading tackler. And then, of course, Jeff Gunner, who I think, Jamie mentioned, he thought he had his best game of the season. Jeff did against Troy the other night. He was a big time factor, a couple of sacks in that ball game, fumble recovery, just generally caused a lot of havoc out there, and we've been pretty good and pretty consistent all year long. Now App got us with some stuff, but they're going to do that to a lot of teams. But overall, I think we have played well. Not having Teron has been a little bit different because he was a difference maker. You had to account for him, which kind of freed up some other guys. We hadn't really had anybody quite step into that dominant role at that DN spot, but hopefully we will at some point.
You guys, the first month of the season, it didn't seem like there were any tests whatsoever. You just got to a point where you built such a big lead on whether it was the Citadel, whether it was UMass, whether it was ULM, and oftentimes guys weren't playing but maybe a few snaps into the third quarter. But the last 2 weeks, very competitive games with having to go to Boone, losing on the final play of the game on the field goal. But even last week against Troy, you built a couple score lead, but they came back to make it 7 points, and they felt the need to fake the punt in the fourth quarter just to make sure they secured the football and the victory. So going from dominating people to having to grind wins out, what was that like, seeing this team having to basically step up to a moment that they really hadn't seen outside of Buffalo the first few games of the season?
To me, it says a lot because, like you mentioned, the first 6 ball games, we were really only tested once, and that was at Buffalo. And that was a game that kind of went down to the wire. I mean, we had a double-digit lead. They went and scored with a couple of minutes left, and then we were able to grind out the last couple of minutes, and then they never saw the ball back. But I think it says a lot about where this program is in terms of, the mentality. Where is this team mentally? Where's the fortitude there? When things start happening that we might not expect, if we're in a battle, if we're in a grind, where are our kids going to go? What are they going to do? Are they going to step up and make a play and battle? And they've done that. Or are they going to, turn tail and do something else? But our kids battled. The App game was, we got off to such a great start. And then to App's credit, they were able to turn things around there at the end of the first quarter. And then we found ourselves in a battle. And it's still, I don't think we played our best up there, but I do want to give them some credit. It still came down to the last play. And then last week, that Troy team just wouldn't go away. I mean, you watched it, you saw it. They wouldn't go away. And much credit to them. They hung in there and battled. So, yeah, I kind of knew that the schedule, when you looked at it before the season started, that it would be a backloaded kind of thing. I felt like that we had a chance to make some hay and get off to a good start in the first 6 games. Our last 6 games where we were going to see, where the rubber met the road, so to speak. What would our mettle look like, when we were going to get tested? And we know that we're going to get tested. We'll get tested Saturday, and then we'll get tested the last few weeks of the season too.
What has it been like not playing on Saturday for a month?
Oh,
got him.
Well, you don't have enough time in this podcast for me to tell you about all these travels. I will say that to be on national television is a blessing. I don't want to overlook that. I mean, for us to be on national TV, if we have to play on a Wednesday or a Thursday night, I'll take that, as opposed to, no one's ever heard of you. I will take that. But what I will also say is the travel piece, coming back from Arkansas State on a Thursday night, when you get back to Memphis around 1:00 in the morning and you literally touch down in Myrtle Beach at 4 a.m. Oh. That's a grind, that's a grind. And then Appalachian State the same way, and then having the late game against Troy on a Thursday night. I mean, but still, I don't want to sit here and say, it's great to have the opportunities to showcase our program in a national, in front of a national TV audience like that. It is a tough thing. But I'll tell you this too. Jamie and I were texting. I said, Coach, it'd be great to get back to Saturday football. He said, what are you talking about? So we're happy to be back to Saturdays, for much of the rest of. I mean, we still have one more Friday game coming up against South Al, but it'll be nice to play Saturday football.
You talked about it a little bit earlier with Jamie Chadwell taking over and really bringing a new energy and kind of attitude to this team. Everybody has seen what the post-game celebrations look like, but the thing that Danny and I have talked about, you see the post-game celebrations and how they go crazy, but on the field, it's very direct, it's very coordinated. You don't see a whole lot of that on the field that just goes haywire.
No, you don't. And again, I think that goes back to what Jamie has been able to instill. I mean, we are pretty disciplined on the field. Now, things may look a little crazy and haywire, like you're talking about in the locker room, and they do. And that's kids having fun. But I also think that you have to draw a line and say, look, when we step out on the field, this is business. Now, you can't lose your head. You can't lose your mind. You can't do stupid things. You can't commit penalties, which you're going to hurt. You can't take a shot at somebody. You got to practice ball security. You don't want to get a dumb penalty for celebrating. And we had a couple of those early, even though I'm not real sure that some of those were deserved. I thought a couple of those were kind of crazy. But, yeah, I mean, hey, go do what you got to do on the field. Get out between those lines and take care of business. And, hey, you get a win, we'll go sing the victory song, and we'll have some sort of crazy celebration that Coach Scott or whoever has concocted to go in there and have a good time. So I think it says a lot to the discipline of being able to do one thing in the locker room while taking care of business on the field.
You've been with this radio crew for ever since the program was recreated, going from the sidelines and then up to the booth. You were here in 2006 for what was a pretty wild game. I know Jerome Simpson went nuts at Paulson Stadium that night, but then 2 years ago here, we played one overtime, then we played another overtime, and we liked the rain in the game that day, so we decided to play a third overtime. Ultimately, it ends up with a Georgia Southern victory. So that means you're 0-2 all-time against Paulson. For a team that doesn't seem to need a whole lot of motivation, I would think that may factor in a little bit in trying to get to 8-1.
I have to think so too, Danny. I mean, I still think about that game, and I know Jamie still talks about that game. Because,
he's still sick from that game. He had a cold for 2 weeks. I remember him talking about that.
It was just here we are in that first overtime. First of all, we dodged a bullet at the end of regulation when Tyler Bass, who can kick a ball about a mile, missed the field goal that would have won it. I'm like, whew, we're going to get a reprieve. And then we get into overtime. We take the lead, and then it's and we got Georgia Southern 4th and 5. I'm like, we stop this play, it's over. And they go for the downs, and they hit it. The officials, first of all, they said incomplete. And I was like, nah, I think he caught that ball. That happened right in front of Bergen.
Bergen was standing right there. He saw the whole thing.
Yeah, he saw the whole thing. And then I give Southern credit for going for the downs on that when they hit it. And then they came right around and did the same thing in the second overtime. But we stopped that play. I mean, and everything else plays out the rest of the way. We got 6 wins. We're bowl eligible, they talked about that a lot in the offseason. One play. We stop a play and everything else plays out the same. Hey, we're going to a bowl. It didn't work out for us. So, I would have to think. And when I get with Jamie on the radio show this week, I imagine we'll probably talk about that as far as motivation, to finally try to go get a win over in Paulson, see what happens.
You talked about how you've been with that program ever since it got re-brought back. What does being able to see what Coastal football is now like for you, being able to see everything that you have?
It's pretty amazing, Colin, because when we first started in 2003, we were a Big South team. We were just starting out, obviously, a lot of young kids. I mean, the stadium, you wouldn't even recognize the stadium now as to what it looked like then. Honestly, I don't think anybody at that time dreamt of where, just 20 years down the road things would be, honestly. And we had good years at the FCS level, to start with Coach Bennett. And we kind of, hit a lull there for a few years. And next thing you know, here comes, Coach Moglia and, people scratching their heads like, how is this guy going to win? I mean, he hadn't coached college football in 30 years. And the next thing you know, we start winning a lot at the FCS level. And then all of a sudden, a few years ago, Sunbelt, makes a few phone calls. Next thing you know, we're going to FBS. We're kind of like, huh? Really? And here we are now in the top 20 of big time college football. And I wouldn't have when Matt hired me in 2003, I wouldn't have thought this soon. But things can happen. You get the right people in place, you get the right attitude, get some momentum. Things can happen.
You and I have talked about it, and you and Danny have talked about it, that especially ever since Coastal joined the Sun Belt, and it kind of goes across a lot of sports, that I'm not going to say there's a full-fledged rivalry between Coastal and Georgia Southern, but there's a lot of really good games between these two through a lot of sports, and the geographic footprint kind of fits too. You've seen the action before the Sun Belt Conference transfer over into the Sun Belt.
Careful, we might have Cajun people listening to this.
Yeah. They'll get.
I hope they are the Cajun people. They're still mad, aren't they?
But what is this? What is this series really
We beat them on their field, and they're still mad.
But what does this series with Coastal and Georgia Southern mean to the Coastal people?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think our people want that rivalry there. I don't know that we've had that, that flashpoint yet to where things just, kind of like what we were just talking about with the Louisiana people, and then the App people got.
Yeah, I think that's there with y'all.
Year. Yeah. But I think baseball has been as good as anything. Honestly, I think there have been some, big time Sun Belt baseball championship, games between the two. And I think that, and some great series, some great games there. Maybe baseball can lead the way in terms of what Georgia Southern and Coastal can do to develop, that kind of geographic rivalry, we're awfully close to each other. I would like to see, our fans come over in droves to Statesboro, just like I'd love to see Georgia Southern people come to Conway. I'm not sure there's been that flashpoint necessarily in football yet, but maybe it's coming. I don't know.
Joe, really appreciate you taking some time with us. Looking forward to catching up on Saturday, and have a safe trip down to Statesboro.
All right, Danny and Colin, thanks for having me on. Look forward to coming over this week.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Joe. Once again, that is Joe Cashion, the voice of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, one of the best people we get to hang out with on the road, whether it's coming to Statesboro. Absolutely one of the best guys in this league.
One, I think we could have talked to him all night. And two, I knew at some point that Louisiana was going to come up.
Oh, no doubt.
I knew we were towards the end. I thought, okay, we got to get this in there somehow because they love it just as much as the Cajuns hate it.
Oh, yeah. That's what I got to talk to Craig Melanson tomorrow, and I guarantee you Coastal Carolina is going to come up.
Look, it was a co-championship. There was no on-field winner for the Sun Belt last year because of COVID. That game was called off, but
Correct.
Coastal claims a little bit more of it because they won at Cajun Field. They kicked the game-winning field goal earlier on in the season, so it's nice that they can throw barbs at each other.
And boy, do they.
And the only way they're going to meet this year is if they get some help, the Chanticleers, from somebody in this league to beat App State, which the Eagles could.
I was about to say, wouldn't that be nice to be us?
Could provide some help there on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
But it's Coastal Carolina, 7-1 on the year, 3-1 in conference play. There's no other way to say it. This team is really, really good. They're 21 in the country for a reason. It's very rare that you have a G5 team lose a game and stay in the top 25. They've been in the top 25 for 21 consecutive weeks. Just to put that in perspective, in the 2020s, if they stay ranked for another week, they are now tied with the number of times that Clemson is ranked in the 2020s.
Jeez. Yeah, because Clemson
was ranked for 22 weeks in the 2020s. One more week and Coastal Carolina will be ranked 22 times in the 2020s.
I thought that there would have to be a little bit of a drop-off. Even with so many guys back, I'm thinking they can't possibly go 11-1 again.
Yeah.
They can't have another undefeated season. They can't. Well, they're not going to have an undefeated season, but I think that this team is better than last year's team is.
Yeah, I do
think
too.
they're better.
The only scuffle on their schedule, again, Appalachian State with a last-second field goal by Chandler State and 30-27, the victory for App State. And that was a really good game.
Yeah.
Again, a Wednesday night game up atop the mountain. This will be the first time since October the 2nd when they played ULM that they will play on Saturday. Just the fourth time they play on Saturday all season this year so far. And we talked about it with Joe. You've got a lot of national attention on this team, so they're going to be the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday game of the week. But it's weird to say you've got to get back into your groove of playing on Saturday.
There's probably a thank you that a lot of this league owes to Coastal because a lot of the attention that the Sun Belt is getting, has gotten, and is going to continue to get, why the league is expanding, is a great deal to do with Coastal going 11-0 in the regular season last year and being in the top 25 for now 21 straight weeks. Louisiana's played their part. App's played their part. A lot of other teams have done a little bit, but I don't know if anybody has done more than Coastal has since the start of last year to elevate the profile of this conference in terms of football.
No, and it's crazy to think the beginning of the 2020 season, the beginning of the year that they went 11-0 in the regular season, they were picked last in the Sun Belt. That shows you what preseason polls mean. But they were picked last in the Sun Belt. They go 11-0 and become America's darling.
Here's what blows my mind a little bit about their offense. Grace Mccall earns everything that is said about him, and I'm looking forward to watching him on Saturday.
Yeah.
We did not get that luxury last year. Granted, backup quarterback Fred Payton threw 3 touchdowns, beat the Eagles. He's not there anymore. He transferred to Mercer. It's going to be maybe the first time in 3 years that Georgia Southern has not faced Coastal's backup, because in 19 when they came down here, Payton was the starter, didn't play because of a shoulder injury. Bryce Carpenter, who is still there, he's the backup now, came in, almost led them to that victory. 3 overtimes later, Georgia Southern pulled it out 30-27. But this offense, scoring 44 points a game, which is good in its own right. It's third in the country. Time of possession-wise, they keep it almost 32 minutes a game. So you're thinking, how can they score that many points but have the ball that long? They're only averaging about 8 or 9 drives a game because it's a variant of the option. They're trying to possess the football. They don't miss.
No.
And I don't know if I can put it any more simply. They don't miss. They score when they have the ball. That's it.
They're the most efficient offense I've seen
Literally in the country, they are the number one offense efficiency-wise in this country. We're not just saying it for hyperbole. They are literally the number one efficient offense in this country as we sit here doing this podcast.
That's insane. And we talk about how Grayson McCall makes us go, and this is somebody that, when you dive into his story, he was a 2-star recruit. He was rated 2,889th player in his class.
You want to know what his one FBS offer was?
You're going to tell me?
Army. He ran an offense kind of like this just outside of Charlotte. Coastal kept him under their hat for a year, and then going into last year, okay, who was going to be the starter? Was it going to be Payton? Was it going to be Carpenter? No.
Nope, it's this McCall kid.
It was going to be McCall, and what's he do against Kansas? 5 touchdowns, player of the week. Huh. Well, Coastal might need some attention this year, and attention they got.
And he's somebody that we talk about Carlton Marshall a lot. We mentioned Roger Carter last week, the tight end for Georgia State. This is somebody that when you're not playing him, this is somebody you root for. Last year he was the Football Writers of America Association most inspirational freshman. That's not just what you do on the field. It's your story. It's what you do off the field to impact not just your community, but kind of college football as a whole. He is somebody that he's worth telling the story.
And now he gets to tell that story because Jamie Chadwell has a policy that freshmen don't speak to the media. So while he's doing all of this last year, no media availability, which there's something to be said for that policy. I can respect a lot because that's, whether you're a redshirt freshman, true freshman or not, that's a lot to handle despite how many successes you are having.
Especially, you think last year he would have probably been on College Game Day. He would have been going through the gauntlet.
Yes, he absolutely would have. But now the team is still doing extremely well, so he's the one that's getting asked for every day. And he's dealing with it. He's still putting up gaudy numbers.
Man, I do not envy the job of Kevin Davis telling everybody and their brother, no, you can't have Grayson McCall.
If there is one that can handle it, it is Kevin
There's
Davis.
no doubt. Kevin Davis is one of the best, if not the best, sports information person in this conference. I absolutely love Kevin.
And it helps McCall when he's on the field. He can throw to maybe the league's best receiver in Jayvon Hiley, definitely the league's best tight end, and might be the country's best tight end.
Yeah.
Isaiah Likely, for 250 pounds, he moves like he's about 150.
Yeah.
He is so light on his feet, but so strong when he makes plays. I'm going to compare him to what Gerald Everett was to South Alabama a few years ago.
Ooh, good call.
Everett looked like he was the best player on the field every week. It was just a matter of could they get him the football. Some weeks they couldn't because South Alabama had quarterback issues in the past.
Yeah.
Coastal doesn't. And when you're a tight end and you have a 99-yard touchdown reception, how does that happen? Because Likely does not run like a tight end. 232 yards and 4 touchdowns against Arkansas State on national television. If he wasn't on a draft board, he was after that game.
Yeah.
Look, we're talking a lot. We're giving Coastal a lot of hype here, but it is earned hype.
And we were a little hesitant last year because when we went to Conway, it was right when all the national spotlight started.
They had just gotten ranked. They were 25th.
They were just ranked. Right. Everybody was starting to take notice. Hey, this Coastal team might be pretty good. Mm-hmm. Last year, not that we were trying to downplay it. We were just trying to be hesitant not to build them up to be the Buffalo Bills. This year, you saw what they did last year. You get to see them as much as you do because they're on the Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday night.
Action.
That's
going to be starting here soon.
Yeah. This is a team that might be, and there would be no way to kind of compare it. This team might be one of the best in the Sun Belt in the last couple of years.
At this rate, offensively, we haven't got to the defense fully yet, but at this rate, the 44 points per game, the more than 500 yards of total offense per game, those would shatter league records.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to maintain that pace, but with the talent that they have, and even though, like he mentioned, they've had some injuries at running back. Shamari Jones is the number one guy right now, missed a couple of weeks because of turf toe, but he had 2 touchdowns against Troy. Reese White is not going to play this week. He was seen on the sidelines on crutches after getting hurt against Troy, and like Joe said, he was the leading rusher going into that game. But Braden Bennett is somebody that he's not going to touch the ball a whole lot in terms of getting carries, but he got a 71-yard touchdown catch. You get him out there on a wheel route, there's not a whole lot of guys in this league that are going to be able to run with him. And oh, by the way, the starting offensive line, all 5 back, the Mighty Mites, the ankle biters. The color guy for Joe, Lane Harris, calls them the groove line.
That's fantastic.
They're not your prototypical FBS offensive line, but App did 2 things that you have to do if you're going to beat them. You've got to shut down the run. That means you've got to maintain physicality and manhandle them up front. App did. You also have to get Mccall off his timing, because this offense is very precise and timing-based, especially when he's throwing the ball to Jayvon Hiley. They love those speed outs. And oftentimes you're getting somewhere between 10 and 15 yards, which is why they can maintain long drives. They don't necessarily gear themselves towards chunk plays, because Hiley, while he can break big plays, and he has the ability to do so, he's a 10 to 15 yard a catch kind of guy, which is just fine. But if you don't get McCall off his timing and you don't maintain 4 quarters worth of physicality against their offensive line, it's going to be a long day. That's what you got to do.
At the end of the day, to wrap up their offense, they have the number 1, number 2, and number 3 in the Sun Belt in yards per catch. Hiley's number 1, Cameron Brown is number 2, Isaiah Likely is number 3. So not just one of the top 3, they have all of the top 3.
And look, some of that is because the out-of-conference, it was soft. Okay? Yeah. They beat the Citadel. They beat UMass. Look, we know UMass. We saw them last year. UMass is a team that has been struggling for a long time. That was going to be an easy win. They were tested by Buffalo, and Buffalo did about everything right. They just scored field goals instead of touchdowns. If they would have gotten touchdowns, they would have beaten Coastal, because they were frustrating McCall. They knocked him out of that game for a little bit. But unfortunately, they couldn't sustain it for a full game, which is what you have to do if you're going to take this team down.
Quickly on the defense, you look up the middle, and the middle linebackers, Teddy Gallagher and Silas Kelly. They call them the mayor and the sheriff, respectively, both captains for this Coastal Carolina team. Teddy Gallagher loves playing Georgia Southern, has set season highs in each of the last 2 years as far as tackles are concerned.
He sure do.
But this is... I can't find any other words to say it. This is a really, really good defense.
There are 2 areas you can get them on defense. They've had some issue at safety. Braden Matz is a guy that started the first 4 games of the season. He hasn't played since. Not necessarily an injury concern, but Shaheem Watkins is somebody that stepped in, and he's been just a little bit better than I think Matz was, and something to monitor there. Chad Staggs, the D coordinator, who is one of the best assistant coaches anywhere, he was the linebackers coach up until this year. Now he's coaching safeties. And that's an interesting parallel because of the turnover that has existed. Now, a guy like Alex Spillum has been a starter for the last 3 years. He's also really good in special teams. He had a block punt of that victory over Kansas. So it's safety. It's a little bit hit or miss. App exploited them, and that's how App came back from 14 down, ended up winning the game. They aren't great defending the run. Now, 150 a game is still 4th in the league. They aren't great against the run. They were against Georgia Southern, though, last year. They had a really good plan. They shut down Georgia Southern's option. They're better at the pass than they are the run. They're number 1 in the league in pass defense, and now that the Eagles have been throwing it more, that might be something we have to consider, because the Eagles are throwing it 23 times a game this year, unfortunately. If you can establish the run with Logan Wright, with Gerald Green, with Jalen White, maintain time of possession. Because Coastal needs to have the football to grind out long drives that end in touchdowns. If Georgia Southern could take that game plan and do it a little bit better, that's going to be a big key.
One final thing on Coastal Carolina. I got to touch on the special teams just for the sheer fact they have blocked 3 punts on the season. 2 of them have been returned for a touchdown. Yep. It's a special teams unit that not just on the punt return, but every part of their special team seems to be clicking on a lot of cylinders.
And it's a lot of different guys. You know, that Jeffrey Gunter's really good at kick blocking, and they had a guy, Marcus Williamson, their old outside linebacker, was really good at blocking kicks. So it seems like it's always somebody special teams-wise, but they've spread out their 4 blocks this year over 4 different players. They blocked a field goal earlier this year as well. And then the kicker, Massimo Biscardi, school record in terms of field goals made. He's missed a couple of games, though, because of a hip issue. He's fine, but they've had to experiment. They used 2 different kickers, and the 2 that they used almost cost them that Buffalo game. So they couldn't get him back soon enough, and he is as steady as there is in the league, 3-time All-Conference. If it comes down to it, he can win a game just like he did at Louisiana last year.
Coastal Carolina, number 21 in the country, 7-1, 3-1 in Sunbelt Conference play. Will be at Allen A. Paulson Stadium this weekend. 6 o'clock to kickoff. We'll be on the air at 4 o'clock with the Cutwater Tailgate Show. It is Salute to Service this weekend. Going to be honoring all the men and women protecting our country, as well as going to have the Student Athlete Advisory Committee hosting a food drive on Saturday at Gate 7, beginning at 4 o'clock is where they will have student athletes and staff manning Gate 7 at Paulson Stadium. So bring any canned foods, non-perishable items, and it'll go to help the Statesboro Food Bank coming up this weekend.